Hey everybody, welcome back. You're at Louder Than Ten's monthly Q&A, and here we have Geri Coady, the color queen. So Geri, say a little hello for everyone.
Hi guys, thanks for coming to the Q&A. Super exciting.
Yeah,
Thanks to Rachel and Travis for inviting me.
yeah, Geri. We've had an awesome opportunity to be able to work with Geri, so I can't wait to dig into this. So I wanted to mention before we get started, this is our fourth event so far, and there's going to be plenty more to come. You can check out our live feed right now, hashtag LT10. And if you missed that, check it out on the YouTube channel a little bit later. We're going to ask Geri some questions towards the end, and you guys have a chance to submit your questions as well if you want to put those through on the site or here on the Q&A Hangouts app. That's perfect. And just a reminder that Louder Than 10 is the school for creative people who run projects. So I want to also make sure that everyone knows who this guy is because he's usually on the other side.
Usually I'm the icon in the corner in this, so I'm actually talking this week, which is
He
or
was
month, I guess.
he was getting lonely, so we wanted to make him feel included. So thank you so much, Geri. Geri is a freelance designer and illustrator. We're actually working together currently on the Simply Accessible site redesign, and recently Travis joined the fray as well, so we are kind of like a little happy family in there, which is going to be going live not very far from now, so keep your eye on simplyaccessible.com, and that is the great work of Derek Featherstone and Elle Waters and a whole bunch of amazing people. You'll be lucky to meet them. Fantastic group. Geri is also very passionate about color theory, all of the ways that color and accessibility work together, and recently released the 5 Simple Steps book called Color Accessibility, and 2 Skillshare courses on using color to actually help refine your palettes, create a tone for your design, and also make better choices for an inclusive audience. Geri, you recently also got married to Mr. Simon Collison, did you not?
Yes, I did. Lucky me.
Fantastic. And you're busy coordinating a final move from your hometown in St. John's, Newfoundland, the furthest, most easterly point in Canada, and
In
all
North
the way.
America.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Damn it. And all the way over to the UK to live with your wonderful hubby. So I know you've got a lot of things going on right now. I
Yeah,
wanted to ask you about that. Basically, having a wedding, going through the planning of a wedding, I mean, that's a huge project in itself, right?
it is massive, and anybody who does their own wedding planning and they have like a full-time job, then I think you're amazing, and you should like pat yourself on the back, because I don't know how you do it, because freelancing, I mean, like I'm lucky to be able to kind of make my own hours, and I I have not been working full weeks uh, since I started freelancing, especially since I've been trying to get over and work on my visa application. So I do have some time to kind of dedicate to it. But I mean, something like that with a full-time job, I don't understand. And I know a lot of people do it. We didn't have a wedding planner or
Right.
anything like that. We just did it all ourselves. Um,
And
but
being designers too, I'm sure I know having one person as a designer in a marriage is one thing. You know,
yeah,
it's fun designing all the invitations and everything. How was it for both of you guys? Was there kind
um,
of fighting with
I think you
that?
know what? It was a fantastic process. We work really well together, and we didn't really run into, I'd say, like any issues at all. And we kind of knew what we wanted to do right from the beginning, and that really helped a lot. Um, but I guess you could say there's probably some kind of level of expectation
Mhm.
for our invitations and all that stuff. And we never really did it for other people. Like that was never really our intention to kind of like impress people. Like I mean, it kind of is, but it's it's not really like we wanted to do it for ourselves because it's a really special project. that you're both going to work on together, and you're going to keep that, and you're going to have that. So we wanted to have something tangible to keep, for the rest of our lives. So why wouldn't we go kind of overboard and do something super fun and unique and whatever? So that was a lot of work, and that was probably the most difficult part of the entire thing. But it all turned out, and it was totally worth it. So
Geri, you have a public site still up for the work that you guys
yeah,
did?
yeah, it's still up, and
What's that like?
that is at GeriandSimon.com.
Geri and Simon. Okay, yeah,
So we've
definitely.
got like the whole little story there, and we've got like a little responsive map that Simon put together, which is amazing. He did such a good job on it. But yeah, it's really cool. So you should check it out for sure.
Yeah. What did you find? Like, was there anything about that process? Now, I mean, obviously there's the exciting like, whoa, we're getting married, and now all of a sudden the planning comes to life. Was there anything that you'd kind of maybe approach differently, especially being as how you guys were basically on separate continents and trying to make all of that fit together during the process?
Yeah, that was kind of difficult at times because I couldn't be there to check out the venue, or there were a couple of meetings I couldn't attend and whatever. But honestly, looking back, I don't think that we would have really changed anything. Um, there was one point I think in the whole planning process where we were kind of like, hang on now, like, are we doing this for us, or are we doing this because we think other people would really like it? And when we kind of thought about it, we were like, you know what? Maybe like that's not necessary, and we could kind of cut things out and save a bit of time and money, which is like important. So I think that's like a really important thing to think about. Like, we wanted to have like a nice, fun, memorable wedding, but not be too overboard about it. So once we started thinking about things that way, we were kind of like, okay, maybe we don't need this. Maybe we don't need that. And it just worked out. So I would say that's a good thing to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Like, if it makes you happy and you really want it, then do it. But otherwise, the most important thing in the wedding for other people is food.
It's true. It's the free drinks or cheap drinks or whatever, getting drunk, partying, visiting, all that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, if you take care of all that, everything else kind of falls into place. So
Yeah.
just like don't worry about it. It's all good.
Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of this weird intersection of sort of, I guess, especially if you are a designer, that kind of creation with a project management sort of flair. Like I know when we got married, it was like when we got done, it was like I never ever want to do that again. That was so much work, for me anyway. Like I was like, holy crap, and so yeah. But I don't know. Now we seem to be going more into I don't know. I find that if we did it again now, we would have a better idea of it after so many years freelancing and
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, another thing, like, I mean, in theory, you only get married once, right?
yeah.
So like you go into it and you don't know what you're doing. Like, you're asking all these questions, and it's like, I don't know, is that a dumb question? Like, we're just kind of going with the flow. Like, you don't really know
Yeah.
what's happening. But I don't know, like, I still kind of find myself like looking through like wedding magazines and stuff, and I'm kind of like, I don't know. I just thought it was, I enjoyed it. I really did. Like, I thought it was really fun. But that might just come down to the fact that I love planning.
Yes.
And I, that, that goes for like trip planning too. Like, I joke sometimes and be like, I should have been a travel agent, but like nobody uses them anymore, so I
Oh,
missed out.
This,
You
you get
know,
more
like,
flexibility with this kind of project planning. I mean, when you look at it, you've technically got so you've got wedding planning, that's a project. You've got your marriage, that's got to be the ultimate project to plan. And I was just thinking about that, and I was like, Jerry, I wonder if we could break that down in like where you sort of you follow like a waterfall or an agile method in your marriage, and you like have to go through the discovery process. You're figuring each other out and actually meeting functionality requirements. Like maybe that's the bad way to look at marriage, but it is the ultimate project, right?
Well, it is, so.
So I wanted to ask you, Geri, like I know that you've been dealing with a ton of immigration-related, not challenges, but just a lot of steps, right? The process is probably fairly convoluted. And how long have you been working on that process now for?
I would say probably since mid-May, but it's going to go on for quite a long time because I would, of course, love to become a citizen so that, I could have, like, dual citizenship and a passport and hopefully make my life, like, traveling a lot easier.
Right.
And the fact that, I'll be living in the UK with my husband, so I should be a citizen, right? So that's going to take, like, 5 years. So it's quite a long process. It's not a fun process. It's an expensive process. But it's been a bit stressful.
Yeah.
What's the hardest part of sort of up? Is it just because it's such foreign terrible pun, but like there's so many unknowns with it, and it's sort of sorting out like all the papers. Like what do you find the most stressful thing about it? Is it things at stake, or how do you feel?
I would say probably the fact that we are both freelancers mean that we know that they're going to look at our application and scrutinize it probably much differently than they would do if somebody was working for a company and had like, salary, like a steady salary sort of thing. It's kind of like, oh, okay, because you have to meet all these financial requirements. So you just look at it and be like, oh, okay, that's fine. But like, it's just so complicated because both of us are freelancers and we've both had to work on getting our finances together. So like when I originally applied for my first visa back in May, it was all on me, and now on this one it's all on Simon. So it's just really like it's very strict. It's incredibly strict. But I'd say another thing that's pretty difficult is the gov.uk website is excellent. They've done such a great job on that website, and it deserves praise. And I believe that a lot of government websites would strive to be like that good. I think one of the issues is the actual visa application website is different.
Right.
So you have like a lot of conflicting information. The visa website's terrible, so you do your application, the grammar is inconsistent, which makes it really difficult because you don't understand the questions. They ask like all these crazy things and you're like, what does that mean? They send you to like forms to print out and include, and the links are wrong. So yeah, like, and I don't understand, like, we have a lawyer to help guide us through it, but if we weren't in the position that we could have that, I don't really know like how we'd do it. It's just crazy.
I think you were joking about writing a book about the process, weren't you? Like once you've kind of added up all your experience. What do you think?
I don't know what I'm going to do, but I think I should probably write like a blog post or something and be like, you know what? If you can, get a lawyer. It's going to be much easier if you can do this, because it's just, I don't know. There's a few forums and stuff online that are very helpful, a lot of people who are very knowledgeable about UK immigration, but, they're still not the people who are on the other end who are going to let you into the country or not. So the lawyer is definitely a bit of peace of mind. But
it's interesting how, as we kind of get a more internet-dependent culture, more of us are independent contractors and freelancers and things like that. It seems like it's just going to get even more complicated because there's, with the employment trends in Canada and the United States, things like that, it's so much harder to travel outside of your country. I know we've gone through similar things and had to consider that type of thing. If we wanted to move down to the States, we'd have to work for other people, shut down a
Exactly.
company or something like that.
Yeah.
Or it's just crazy how fast our industry goes versus
Yeah,
the laws and everything like that. So
exactly. And a lot of the laws, I guess, really are outdated because, like so many of us do want to be able to work and travel at the same time and whatever. And
Mhm.
it's so difficult because you can't really do that. So, I won't be like I'm not allowed to work in the UK, but once I get my visa sorted, and my spouse visa, then yes, I will be allowed to work,
Right.
which is great. But it's different. It's really difficult. Like I remember hearing, um, I think it was Jeffrey Zaltman who kind of got in trouble at the border, because he just told them, he's like, oh, I'm going to do a talk in England and whatever. And they were like, oh, are you? Are you getting paid for it? And he's like, yeah, they paid for my flight and whatever. And he got a warning, I think, something like that. But I
Mhm.
think he's not allowed like back in the country or something without like a proper work visa,
Wow.
which like of course you can get, but it's just a lot of people I guess don't realize it, and the whole conference speaking thing, like if you get paid, like you can't you can't really do that without getting like a proper work visa, so
Mhm.
it's just so complicated.
yeah, they don't make it easy.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, no kidding. So, I mean, not only do you have all this immigration stuff to worry about, I was actually curious about how you're going to take all of that, since it's going to continue for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance, Jerry, to think about like your kind of what your new life's going to look like when you get over in terms of how are you going to set up your work day? And I mean, obviously now you have a time zone change.
Yeah,
What's it like for you?
to be honest, I haven't really given it a lot of thought. There's going to be some big changes for sure. One of them would be money, because the rates that I charged here are not going to fly in the UK.
Oh,
So that's one thing that I'm going to have to take a look at. Um, but other than that, I think I'm just going to like play it by ear. And when I get over there, like one of the first things I'll do is, make sure that I get an accountant, make sure that everything is in place like from day one, so that I kind of make sure nothing, like I don't really shoot myself in the foot like down the road, like when it's time for citizenship application or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think step number one is to chat with some kind of like accountant, business person, maybe some friends and stuff who do have freelance businesses. I want to do it right.
yeah.
Definitely want to do it right, because I don't really know anything yet about like taxes. Like, will I have to pay taxes in both countries going forward? Like, I don't really know that. I know some people do, like some friends and stuff who've gone over from the States, and I don't know. It's too stressful to think about now, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna get over and then just try to figure it all out.
It's amazing
But
how much of a mental tax that takes on you when you're, especially when you start in a new area and trying to figure out the laws. Like it really interferes with kind of work and everything else. So
Mhm.
yeah, exactly, because like you need to invest all this time in making sure you learn how to do it. And that's just taking away from time that you could be, actually making money and all that other stuff. So I don't know. And I think like maybe I might try to get more UK clients, maybe try to limit the work that I do on the West Coast. 'Cause
Don't tell them.
I don't know. I have no idea. We'll
Yeah.
just see what happens, I guess.
Fair. Well, maybe you and Simon can band together, join forces, and since you already have such a good work ethic, then who
Yeah,
knows,
we've
right?
we've we've discussed it. We've
Yeah.
discussed it.
It's not so bad. You
But
just gotta put up with them all the time.
yeah,
That's the
it's
only
fine.
challenge.
Well, you have to do that anyway, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
As long as you have a separate office or you just give him the bathroom. Like it's fine, it works out. Just relegate him to whatever corner.
that's where I spend half my time. That's basically my
In the
office.
bathroom.
Unrelated.
Yeah,
Cool.
I
So,
think it'd be super fun, but we'll see what
yeah.
happens.
Yeah, totally. Well, let us know. I wanna hear about this. And if we see any weird passive aggressive tweets from Simon, we'll know. I'm in the bathroom again. So, all right. So we've got all these cool things happening. I know I have never visited St. John's. We didn't get it out as far as, I mean, it's a bit further, a ferry ride all the way over to St. John's, but it's a beautiful looking city, Geri. Like, tell me, what are you going to miss most about your city, aside from obviously the family? I mean, you're going to miss your mom and your dad, and do you have siblings? I forget.
Yeah. No, just me.
Just you. So what are you going to miss?
I would say probably, well, I mean, obviously family and friends, like you said, but I think the scenery, and I think a lot of people who grow up here take it for granted. And I don't know, I feel like the more that I travel, the more that I come back here, I'm kind of like, hold on a second, like Simon's really fascinated by this. He's like, you have this like literally like a 10-minute drive like outside of your city. It's crazy. And it's true, like, I mean, I can go for a drive and just see amazing stuff in like 10 or 15 minutes from my house. What's your
go-to?
Oh, I love Signal Hill because it's like, it's part of the city, but you get such a beautiful view and you can see the ocean and the cliffs and I don't know, just the ocean. The ocean is another thing I'll miss because I'm moving to England, like Nottingham, which is basically the city like furthest from the sea in all of England, I think. So like I'm gonna be like landlocked.
How far is it though? 4 hours? 3 hours?
No, it's actually I think it's only like a 2.5 hour drive to the sea, which isn't too bad, but it's doable.
The ocean's a little frigid around most of the winter, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess no different than in St. John's.
No, not really. But you know, like I don't know, the smell. I love the smell of the ocean. It's so good. But you know what? Maybe eventually we'll move somewhere closer to the coast. We don't really know yet, but
the hills of Dover or something like that.
Oh, would it be beautiful?
That would be.
It would be amazing. It's beautiful down there.
So one thing I noticed, like Rachel said, we've never been to St. John's ever, but doing some sort of research on the city, it's actually a really colorful place, or there's at least some colorful areas there.
Oh yeah.
Does that have any influence on sort of your focus on color? Like it seems like you've got such a love for it and like an approach to it that not many other designers have. Or I know as a designer myself, I got really intimidated by color really early in my career, and I think a lot of other people do too. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think being intimidated by it is probably pretty normal. I know that I definitely was at first as well, except maybe when you're younger and you know, like when you're a kid, you're just like whatever, I'm just gonna make like whatever. I definitely will miss the color here. I think it's amazing, and England's definitely a little bit more like brown. Only in terms of the buildings, because like I find everything else in England's like super green, even though like I don't know, especially even in winter, it's like, really, this is winter? It's so green. Nobody agrees with me, but whatever. But I don't know. You know, I've never really done much New Zealand-inspired like artwork stuff, which is probably, I don't know, I'm probably in the minority for anybody who's into art and design, I think, here. Because I guess like so many people are so inspired by that. I would say that, yes, it's definitely influenced my color choices, especially probably in the last few years when I kind of have appreciated it more and just kind of have like a better eye for it and be like, you know what, like it's just different when you grow up around it. I think you do take it for granted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think someday though I would like to do something. I have been thinking about a lot of like illustration based ideas like that I could do, like around some like Newfoundland type stuff, but
Yeah.
nothing's come up yet. But
Might
I
get
actually have done sorry, one art piece inspired by Newfoundland is black and white.
the true colors.
Yeah.
That's cute.
I wonder if it has like a subliminal influence as you like growing up in a place like that. Like you just kind of like, I don't know, it would.
I don't know.
Internalize or
It's
something.
like osmosis or
Yeah.
something.
I think another thing though, like about Newfoundland and the scenery is it just makes for such good black and white photography because it's so like it can be really stark, especially the cliffs and stuff. It is just like it's just begging to be black and white. So it's really interesting. You've got like those two extremes. You've got like the man-made stuff, which is really colorful, and it almost seems like it's done on purpose to kind of brighten everything up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to think of it that way.
I bet you could conduct your own experiment, Geri. So when you move, think about this, and when you start creating, notice if your color choices change because of your surroundings. So if all of a sudden you're like in the midst of brown, as you put it, maybe you're gonna pump up your colors, or maybe you're gonna like pull them back because now you're like fitting into the new.
Yeah, who knows?
Filter.
Who knows?
I'm gonna come back and ask you in like what are you planning on getting over there?
Probably January is the goal.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you in June, and then we'll see.
Okay.
Okay, deal.
Got a lot of work ahead of you.
Yeah, I'm gonna put
6
you to
months.
work. That's so cool.
Sweet.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about like we're kind of going in this directional path of like all of the things that have influenced you and how you ended up here, really sitting like as a freelancer who's so passionate about color, taking this concept of working with a company who is, I mean, their whole goal is about color accessibility, right? So not just color accessibility, but accessibility for all of us to make a better web. And I wanted to ask you about some of the things that you remember growing up. First of all, was design something that your friends valued or that you found like other people around you in your class valued?
I would say probably my closest friends in school. There were a few who were just amazing, like illustrators, just well, I can't really call them illustrators when you're like, 6 or 7 years old, but they had that talent, and I think that was probably a big influence because I'm a little bit competitive. So it's kind of like, I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that too. I don't know, like, my mom was like kind of like, she always gave me like art supplies, so I just always wanted to do that. Cartoons. I think like even outside of like, the people that I grew up with, like I don't know, it's just I think that really kind of got me into it because I just wanted to draw everything that I saw on TV. So I wouldn't say that like the younger grades had like a massive
Oh, darn.
that was I would say probably yeah, I'd say probably my older years in school, my later years, I definitely had a much bigger influence from my classmates because I went to an amazing high school that really, really valued art and design. It was kind of the school that you would go to if you could. It was kind of difficult because like you kind of have to go to the school in your neighborhood, but I was very lucky that I lived in that neighborhood, and the school just put such a big focus on it, and they had their own art gallery. Like it's a small one, but it was still an art gallery, and that's kind of not something that you'd find in a lot of schools, at least not here in Newfoundland. So, we would get ready for exhibitions, and we would, get all of our work like professionally framed, and it was just like a really cool thing to be a part of, and that was definitely like a massive influence on me. I would say it was much bigger than even just the younger years. It was because like I always found art classes in school kind of have like a bit of everybody kind of thinks, oh, it's just an easy course. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And it was never really like that for me because I took it really seriously. So I feel like that once I got into that school, it was when it kind of I started thinking about my career path a bit more and what I was going to do with it.
So I wonder, had you not gone to that high school, or even just had you grown up in a different community, if that would have changed your path. Do you think that's possible,
I
or?
think, yeah, I think it definitely could because like originally I wasn't going to do any design type stuff. Like I was more interested in computers.
Hmm.
And by that I mean like, I almost did a programming like course in college, and then I was just like, wait, no, like this is the worst idea. Like I hate math. I hate numbers. I hate, like I hate all these things. Like, and then I just canceled my application and I switched it into another course. But
Wow.
I think it definitely could have changed. Yeah,
Do you
I
remember, Jerry, there being a person in your life that literally sort of influenced for you? Like, was there a teacher or someone who just said, you need to go for this? Like, what was the major clincher for that?
well, I had an art teacher. It's actually an interesting question. I had an art teacher at this high school that I went to, and she really loved my work, but she also really tried to push me to go to university and do art. And I was having none of it because I did not want to do art in university. And I didn't even want to go to university because I was really getting into web design at the time. And I was just like, I don't really like how you're kind of harassing me all the time. And it got really bad at one point. And she was just like, really, I don't know, dismissive about like the way I kind of brushed her off, I guess. Like, and I was just like, oh, I really like web design. I really like digital, or like I was getting into actual like illustration more. And I don't know. I don't think she really liked it. I don't think she understood the graphic design spin on things. I don't think she really understood that. And for her, it was more about like expression and whatever. And I'm just not really into that. I like illustration. I like illustrating for clients. Like it's got like a problem solving element. It's not really about me, and I really like that. But I think in a way she kind of influenced me to go the opposite way because I just wanted to be like, no, like I'm not doing this. I'm gonna do what I want to do, and I think in a way she was kind of like a good influence in a bad way,
That's
but
hilarious.
so like
So
yeah,
you you also know how to code as well, right? You can sort of balance both sides of that block and design and code.
a
We
bit,
have a
yeah. Like I'm a
yeah.
bit, yeah.
We have a question actually from a guy you may know by the name of Mike, and he's wanting to know
Oh,
at what age were you actually introduced to coding for the web? Like, what do you remember
I
about
would say that that was probably the very first thing that I ever learned about web design because it was pretty much the only thing that you could do. So I would say probably 1998, 1999, which would have put me at like I don't even know,
that?
15, 16, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I just I just wanted to learn HTML because I didn't really know how else to make a website, and I just started to learn a bit of that, and then eventually I discovered like the whole web editors and Netscape. What was it called again?
Yeah.
The Netscape editor,
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh, this is really cool, and like Hot Dog Express. Do you remember that?
Yes. Oh
Do you
my
remember
God.
that?
Yeah.
Like the Two Cows website. You could Two Cows was amazing.
Oh yeah.
Two Cows was like that was great. So yeah, I started to play around with that more because it's a little bit more visual and it meant I didn't have to like play around with code too much. Um, but then eventually I just kind of got back into like, ooh, what's this CSS?
Hmm.
Um, So I always kind of like enjoyed dabbling in it, but like these days I'm kind of more into the design side of things. I love working with uh, front end developers and designers. So this is really funny, but Dan Mull has this Brooklyn Beta review on his website, and he has all these like things taken out of context. And one of the things that he put up of one of his memorable moments of the last Brooklyn Beta was learning that Geri Coady hates web design. I was like, okay, like I said that, but I didn't mean that. I meant like I really love I really like kind of stepping back from the code and working with people, like Travis, like yourself, who are definitely a bit more faster at it. Like I'm totally capable. Like I've done my own website. Like I do it like all the time, but I just lately I feel like, I need to focus on my own talents and what makes me different from somebody else because I understand how to do it, and that gives me the ability to be able to speak with people and, okay, we need to do this, and I know if something's going to work or not. But I like to kind of work on the design and illustration side of things more. I just feel like, like for years, I think a lot of people are like this, but for years I just wanted to do everything.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing in design and technology that I haven't tried to do myself. Even, Flash animation and 3D animation, and I'm just like, I don't like any of that stuff, and I just need to do what, is going to make me happy. So
Yeah, I think the key is that you understand kind of the underlying thing, which it makes you a much better designer in that you're capable, you have an understanding, and it like even for myself working with you, it's clear that you do understand that in the way you design things and deliver things. It just makes my job easier if I'm coding that out or whatever else. So yeah, you can
yeah,
definitely tell the difference working between different people who understand it and don't.
yeah, you definitely need to understand it, and I've worked with a lot of designers, and they don't understand it, and that's really frustrating. So like, I mean, you have to keep on top of it. You have to learn. Like, I mean, everything from responsive images to like page weight and all this kind of thing. Like, all that stuff matters, and as a designer, if you don't get it, you're just it's
Mm-hmm.
just gonna be difficult. It's gonna be a lot harder.
I was going to ask too, Jerry, because I mean, a lot of what we talk about at Louder Than 10 is the ability to be cross-disciplinary in that you understand the roles of your teammates. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be an authority in development or an authority in, quality assurance testing, but even as a project manager, like I find so much benefit when
Yeah.
I understand how does that code work? How long does it take? What kind of process, feeds back into the design loop, and how does that affect my ability to schedule and plan the project? And I was curious, Jerry. So, I mean, before you were doing freelance, you were working in an agency. Did you work with a project manager at all?
Yeah, I would work with multiple project managers. Like our account managers were kind of the project manager of whichever client. So yeah, I got to work with probably five, maybe sometimes 4 or 5 different ones at a time.
Do you
At the
remember
busiest.
do you remember like any situations where I guess like you were like, oh, I wish that I could have sort of like understood I guess maybe why I need to communicate this or what I should be communicating to help the project manager like I don't know do a better job maybe of looking after the whole team. Do you know what I mean? Like there's always these parts of the project that if we don't communicate, they end up screwing us in the long term. And I was just wondering if
Yeah.
you could think of something like that that
I
happened to you.
think maybe not like anything like specific, like a specific story or anything, but I think like in general, a lot of the project managers and account managers that I would work with, we were removed from the client. So like, we didn't have the direct conversation with the client. Occasionally we would like kick-off meetings and whatever, but day to day, I mean, you're not talking to the client. And I think one of the biggest things is, like if you don't explain your design decisions to your PM, they're if they go and turn around and then present your work to the clients, the client's just going to take that at face value and not really, understand the decisions. And at the same time, if a client comes back and says, no, that logo has to be, pink, and you're like, well, why does it have to be pink? And they're like, well, because I really like pink. And I'm like, no, like that's, the project manager needs to kind of, I think, be able to see warning signs like that. Like, is this client requesting this because it's like their personal choice? Or do they really have like the viewers and the customers in mind? Because I think that a lot of designers can kind of get a bad rap too, because they're like, oh, well, they don't want to change it because they just think it looks great and they don't want their ego to be like damaged, And it's like, well, sometimes that's true, and I think a lot of designers do get better at that over time. I mean, everybody learns about that kind of thing, but if it's truly not your ego speaking, and it's like, no, we really can't have a pink logo because this, and this. Like you need to be able to communicate that, and the PMs need to understand that too. And that's why I think, like you said, like PMs need to kind of understand some basic things, like basic understanding of accessibility and why it matters. And
Yeah.
I just, communication is really important, and it really just comes down to that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think designers too, it's really important to have that ability to communicate those ideas and those things just as well, like you said, to the PMs. PMs need to be able to translate that and understand what you're talking about. And I don't know, I think it's great to have the designer in those conversations a lot of time and skip that path as well sometimes.
I kind of wonder, Geri, like, I feel like what happens, I've seen it happen. A lot of the time, a designer will come in with a really good reason for why they have their design. They will present that to the project manager or the account manager, and somehow, somewhere in that conversation changes so that by the time the client gets it, it's been so diluted that the client can come back and say, well, you're kind of being a little wishy-washy about why you think this needs to be, so let's just make it pink. Right? And I feel like, in a way, it's a project manager's role to support and uphold the business case, or whatever matches the business goals for that particular project. So I don't know if you've ever felt that way, like if people, it's not that you're getting let down, but the role of the PM is to uphold you, right? To support your decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there's definitely been some situations where I think maybe some PMs may have not done such a great job at passing that information along when you couldn't be in the meeting. So I was really lucky that, as an art director, I did get to go to a lot of meetings, especially ones that were very important. But one of the things I think would happen is towards the end of the project, like during that crunch time, when the client really starts to come back and be like, no, we need to change this. Because it doesn't always happen throughout, like, the earliest stages. It's always kind of like toward the end.
Yeah.
And I've usually found then, like, there's no time to have a meeting and go back and be like, no, this is why. Like, sometimes you have no choice but to just be like, okay, we're not gonna be able to solve this unless we just give in and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really sad, because a lot of really good work can just fall apart right at the very end, and you could be feeling great about it the entire time, and then week before launch you're like, oh, there's another website I can't put in my portfolio ever.
And a lot of
Yeah.
that has to do with the expectation that you set up right from the start, right? Like with the client and when those changes are okay to happen and when those changes should not be happening, which is like not at the last week before launch. And I think that traditional marketing agencies get into that situation a little bit more frequently where they just do endless rounds of revisions and then it
Yeah.
ends up just coming back like by the end everyone's just like got their Eeyore face on. They're like, I don't even like this project anymore, and it's so sad. It's so defeating. Hey.
Yeah, it's happened quite often in, I mean, a lot of places where I've worked. I mean, like I can't just say one specific. It just happens so much. Because, like you don't want to do that. You want to make the client happy. It's important because or you're paying your wages. Like if it wasn't for the clients, you would not be there.
Yeah.
So a lot of designers do treat clients unfairly, and that's definitely true. But at the same time, you just kind of, like you said, you have to kind of manage expectations in the beginning and try to stick to it and be like, if that does arise, it's like, well, you had your chance. You have to figure out some compromises and stuff, but it just happens a lot, and it's definitely a big issue.
Yeah, for sure. So, Geri, we have about like 15 minutes. So, I wanted to invite the audience, if you do start to have any questions around design, we're actually going to jump into the accessibility color details right now.
Yep.
If you want to have anything that kind of pops up, feel free to post it. And I wanted to ask Geri, I'm really curious about all this color accessibility stuff, because I think you and I had talked about this, but accessibility was like one of those things that was really hot in the early 2000s, and like everyone was doing it, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it almost dropped off the face of the earth and it became like relegated to the corner of the internet.
Yeah.
And not popular, and not, it was like, well, we can't make beautiful sites.
I think we all just figured like, oh, we learned all this, we know it, and we kind of just sort of left it at that. Like, we know to write standards-based code and all this stuff, but that's not all there is.
No, right? So tell us some things that you think the average designer or even anyone on a team might not know about color and accessibility.
I think like this is like the biggest thing that I see like all the time, and it's definitely color contrast and just contrast in general, like not just color, but just even gray text on a white background. Like I saw it on a website that launched like yesterday. Like it's not enough, and I think like what you said is right. Like people have gotten so comfortable in being like, well, yeah, like we write standards, we know web standards is great, and that's great because it does take care of a lot of things. But in the design side of things, like there's things that you will miss.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially with technology getting more advanced, and you can do like so much stuff in design now, people just kind of, I think, design and assume that it's all good, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's still, like you don't even have to have a disability to be affected by it. You could be looking, I don't know, at your phone, and it's like a sunny day, and your contrast's not very good, and it's like you can't read it. And then you've got like older people who don't necessarily have a disability, but their vision is still not as good as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times have I heard, like my mom say that she couldn't see something on the screen, and it wasn't her fault. It's just because it's not, the contrast is not there.
Right.
So you really have to think about that kind of stuff and make sure that, it's going to be visible and legible by as many people as possible. It doesn't mean that you have to make it ugly or too contrasty or whatever.
And there are some pretty like standard tests out there. You can run your URL through like a contrast, accessibility reader. It'll tell you if you have the proper kinds of headlines and the proper contrast. The one on the top of my head I think of is the Wave or the Web AIM.
Yep.
Is it .org? I forget. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a really quick way to look at if you're meeting the basic standards. So
Yeah.
obviously, contrast is an issue. What is another quick issue about color accessibility? Like, what do you see some common errors happening in terms of the way people approach design or try to, I guess, not include it in their process?
I would say that there's a lot of things. One of the culprits I would say is probably more on websites that focus on shopping and especially like clothing and that sort of thing. So this is not a massive problem compared to say general like contrast issues, but like if you're colorblind, like you're truly colorblind and you have a lot of issues distinguishing between like different colors of clothing or whatever, I have seen so many websites color searches like looking for clothing based on what color it is, and it's just a palette. There's no labels whatsoever. That's really hard for people because they could be looking at it and blue could look like purple, or red and green could end up looking like brown or something, and it's just an extra issue, like it's a thing for them to deal with that could be so easily fixed.
Right. So what you're saying basically is those little color swatches where you can choose the color of your t-shirt or whatever, people will just have the color block and they won't have any descriptor in it or alternative text that actually tells people, even like if it was someone who was maybe visually impaired and also had other issues with just determining the sort of, I guess, style they want, right? Having the ability for a screen reader to help them, or
exactly.
So that information is like
infographics as well are really bad.
Infographics.
They're really bad because, again, like if you don't label any of the data in your infographics, I mean, I've seen so many. There was this really, really terrible one that's Andy Bio posted once, because I know that he's colorblind, and he posted one, and I can't remember what it was, but it was a line graph, and all of the lines were intersecting, and they were all different colors, and it was a nightmare. Like, it was bad enough for me, and like I've got really good color vision, but looking at it from the point of a person with color blindness, like I was just curious. I turned on like the Color Oracle simulator. It was just a bunch of it was crazy. I'm just like, nobody could read this. Nobody. It's really difficult. So labeling is super important, and it's not difficult to do. And there's like no excuse for like anybody to not do that.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's just good design. It's not even just affording for people who are colorblind or anything else, right? It's like things like you see bar graphs, for instance, that are just colors, but just by adding like a visual pattern that's different between the bars, it not only makes it easier for people who are colorblind to differentiate them, and if there's a legend or whatever, but for everybody, like it's just
exactly
way quicker to pick out. And like you said, like with text contrast, like I've got good vision, and just being able to read that, and it's not that good, but being able to read something like you said, like on the phone or whatever, it makes so much difference. Like, you're in the bathroom or whatever.
Where he is 50% of the time.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that, Geri, too. Like, do you find or do you notice? So when we're talking about money, or even like positives and negatives when we're designing, we typically associate green with positives, like a increase in money, and reds with a decrease, or even like stops and goes, right? So if there's just an icon, and say the icon's not even that clear, like what can you see some of the problems that are associated with just slapping it with a green color and then walking away?
Yeah, I find like a lot of websites too, like sometimes, well, not, I wouldn't say a lot, but I have seen it occasionally in apps and stuff as well. They'd be like, oh, click green button for what, and it's like, what? Which one is the green one? Because like, I had a photography teacher, and he was a black and white photography teacher, which is great because I think that probably had his color blindness probably had some influence on that. But yeah, his red and green. He said it all looked like brown to him.
Right.
So, like some basic things like that you were just kind of like, oh, okay, this is clear, this is red and green. It's like, no, it's not. Like, you can't just assume. You can't just be like, oh, yeah, everybody's going to know what that is. So you just really have to think about your decisions and research it, look into it, and yeah.
It's almost like having a secondary level of communication for everything you're trying to convey, right? You can't rely on color alone because, like I think you talk about this a lot in your color accessibility book, but it's like you can present so many different meanings and tones with color. So if you're not intending to present that tone, then you have to have another way for people to interpret the meaning of your colors, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many like cultural differences in color as well, and like white is like a color of mourning in a lot of Asian countries, like that sort of thing. So you just have to know your audience, and just it's definitely harder if you've got a global audience, but if you do your research and make some informed decisions, you're gonna have less of a chance of doing something completely faux pas, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So with the Simply Accessible site, Geri, you kind of have chosen, like, I don't know, I guess people have seen a hint of this because if they go to like SA Teaches, it's sateach.es, that's like the sneak peek of the brand that you've been working on, and we've released sort of like a look at how that will translate when we launch the design. What kinds of thoughts were going into the color palette there? Like, they're very, very defined colors, and I'm really curious to hear like what you were thinking with that.
I think one of the things that I wanted to do was to not make it a huge departure from like their current brand. So, I mean, I guess we can be honest and say that they haven't really had much of a current brand except for maybe their color, which has been kind of blue and like some deep oranges. So, instead of like they haven't really had like a logo to carry over that sort of thing, so we thought that maybe color would be the thing that we would keep consistent. So the color is fairly similar to what is on the current website, but we've obviously made some adjustments to the contrast, and thinking about like Travis, I was talking to you and also Gavin about which instances are we going to use this orange over a certain background? Because it's not always just about the color of text over a colored background, but it's also like what that object sits on. And, you don't want it to look too just, murky or whatever. Like if you think you've got somebody with a color disability, a color vision disability. So it's kind of been a bit challenging at times because the colors that we did choose are, I would not say the best colors, but with some adjustments, we've kind of reached those color contrast ratios that are necessary. So I think we're gonna write a blog post about that later, which should be fun. Yeah.
That's amazing to talk about that because I think the whole thing fitting together in terms of the readability of the site, the clean, you chose some really clean typefaces or a typeface I should say, and just how that all fits together in the hierarchy of the page. I'm pretty.
I really like how like I love your approach to using illustration. I'm a huge fan myself. I find that so many websites are really lazy with just like finding a generic photo and putting it on top or something like that, but it doesn't actually add anything to the story. I think if you look in more print design and everything, in a magazine especially, there's almost never just a generic photo unless it's like an interview of someone, it's their photo, but it's always like either a modified image or an illustration or anything, and it helps tell that story so much. Is like, how do you approach photos in the web world for you? And I know you put it, it's obviously important for you. What's your approach to that?
I would say that you're probably right. Like, I mean, I have come from more of a print design background, and when I worked in an agency, I would say probably 80% of the time I was working on print stuff. So I just love, like what you said, like how magazines and like those sort of publications kind of deal with illustration and photography. And I just feel, slapping a photo up and making it in a square is something that has kind of been around on the web forever because, that's what they are. Photos are kind of like squares, and before you get the whole, support for like cool like transparencies and, all that kind of thing, like you're kind of limited. So I think a lot of people are still kind of stuck in that. So we had some fun with the Simply Accessible site with some photos, which people will see later, I think. But yeah, I think just make it look different. Do some fun stuff. Make it look more like print stuff.
I have a question for you, Geri. I was really curious. You're a music lover. You appreciate an album or two. Is that right? I have something I wanted to show you, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about what this is all about. Can you maybe tell me about this little guy over here?
Hold on, it's loading because your video. Oh my god.
So what does that say, Geri?
Those are some misheard lyrics to Empire State of Mind that Alicia Keys sings. Simon made this.
I love it.
But seriously, if you listen to that song, you will listen to the chorus, and that is what she sings, and you will never hear the song the same way again.
I think that's absolutely the case, because I was trying to put it all together, and I was like, I don't really get it, but I like it.
I was like, oh, is she a musician too? Are you a musician?
No, I wish. That would be great. Simon does a lot of fake album covers for things. So he's done like some like amazing ones for like Fictive Kin. He made this one for me. And he just picked a misheard lyric and went with it.
Oh, I love it.
You guys will all be listening to Empire State of Mind later, and you'll never hear the right lyrics again.
I'm just gonna see your face. That's all. I'm just smiling face and picture Wet Dream Tomatoes. That's ridiculous.
That comes up in Google image search, doesn't it?
Oh,
yeah, that's like so out of context.
Yeah, and not because I was looking for Jungle Wet Dream Tomatoes. It was actually because I was looking for you. So you might want to look into that.
I might want to look into that.
I think it's awesome. Leave it as it is.
Funny. So funny.
That's awesome. So Geri, thank you so much. I think that kind of rounds out our time. I wanted to thank you for talking us through, some of the things that are really important in terms of considering all of our audiences and not just some of our audiences when we're talking about accessibility and color. We have a question. Actually, Simon is asking, would Rachel and Travis like their own fake album cover?
Yeah.
They would, absolutely.
I think they would.
As good as Geri's, because Geri's got rules.
I'm pretty sure mine is the best.
Pretty sure we can't do anything.
Pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, for sure. So Geri, if people want to find you, and like tell us a little bit about what's the next big thing that you think you're doing or you want to share with people. What do you got going on?
I think that the next big thing, I'm pretty sure this is going to happen. I think I'm going to do a third Skillshare course. Not sure when it's going to come out yet. But hopefully it's something I can work on maybe over Christmas a little bit. I've already kind of done the outline for it. I would like to teach how I do some of my illustration, because a lot of people do ask me. I do use a lot of textures, a little bit more like organic kind of feel in my work. So a lot of people have asked me, they're like, how do you do that? How do you do that? So I'm like, you know what? I've done 2 color classes on Skillshare now, so I'm going to do like a really super easy, super fun, like, do this in like 45 minutes and have your own little illustration type thing. So I'd say probably look out for that in the new year. Other than that, you can take my current Skillshare classes. You can just look for my name and you'll find those. You can go to my website, hellogeri.com. You can follow me on Twitter, hellogeri. And you can check out my book on 5 Simple Steps.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Geri.
Thanks.
You and I will probably be chatting. If not today, then we'll see you on Monday for the rest
Yeah,
of
definitely. Definitely. We will be talking. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, have a good one.
Fun.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, you too.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.